In October 2022, the organization Undoing Tax Abuse released an investigative report on the National Student Financial Aid Scheme's direct payment scheme. Now, the same scheme which is currently making headlines with many students not receiving their payments. Joining us now to discuss this is OUTA's investigation manager, Rudie Heyneke. A very good morning, Rudie. Just an update on the investigative report. Where are we right now?
Good morning, Will. Yes. After the report of October 2022, we received a lot of additional information and decided to release this updated report and include that information. And that is where we are today. This has been shared with the SIU. And unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of cooperation from NSFAS when we requested, the tender documents with a PIA request. But with the additional information that we received, we were able to compile this report.
And obviously, there are still a number of outdated, if I can call it, requests in as far as the tender documents that you've requested from the department, the relevant departments is concerned. How far are you in those conversations, and have they been forthcoming with information?
No, from NSFAS side, we didn't get any cooperation and we didn't receive any documents. The documents that we used in the report was basically information and documents that were leaked to us by whistleblowers and other sources. And some of them, or most of them, we could authenticate, and that is the only information that we received with no cooperation from NSFAS.
And it's coming up to a year now, because this is obviously last year. What is the next course of action, Rudie? Well,
in June this year, NSFAS started to pay the students with this new payment solution. There's a lot of problems. I think the biggest problem the students are facing are the extreme and excessive fees that the service providers are charging. And we saw the students marching to the union buildings a week or two ago. We see on social media all the complaints that they lodge. And it seems like all the calls from the students and the public outcry is ignored by NSFAS because they are just going forward and implementing the system without listening to the end user, who's the student.
And the internal appeal that you've lodged as well in December, how far is that, Rudie?
That's done and dusted. It's been denied. And at that stage, OUTA had to make a decision. Are we going to litigate, or will we, take our information to the SIU? Because we must remember that the SIU do have a proclamation to investigate NSFAS. And if something is not fall within their scope, they can ask for extension of their scope. So we shared with the information with the SIU because it is difficult. We've seen it a few years ago when we also did a PIA application and we had to go to court, and 3 years later only we received the documents that we requested. So the decision was made not to litigate, not to, the costs is huge, and rather to give our information and share it with the SIU.
Rudie, let's talk about the most affected person within this equation, which is the student. I imagine you are keeping them at the back of your mind as you go through this process. What's going to happen? What's the likelihood or the likely reality that will happen when these funds aren't made available necessarily for the students that need them?
Yeah, I don't think that the students were in the back of our minds. They were, I think, centered in this whole, upfront and center in this whole investigation. The problem that we have is that, the students, the NSFAS students, are really, the people coming from the poorest households in this country. That's why they are funded by NSFAS. Earlier this year, the Minister of Higher Education announced that there's an increase in the allowances of students, and that was welcomed throughout, the student society. But with this new payment system, that increase amount is really being eaten up by the fees that the student must pay. And if you think about it, that in the remainder of the contract period for these service providers, just over 3 billion rand could be paid in fees, or not paid in fees, but taken from the students collectively. And that is, the huge problem that we sit with. In 2017, when former President Zuma announced free education and the loan scheme of NSFAS was converted into a bursary scheme, you did not see taxpayers, jumping up and down and say, we're not going to fund the students. Money is available. It was made available in the budget, and the students, the poorest of the poor, they must get this. But now with this scheme, 4% of it, 2 transactions, and 4% of your allowance is gone. Now, everybody, I believe, will have a problem if your employer forces you, number one, to use a specific bank account, and number two, when your income, when your salary is paid in there, or your allowance, 4% of it's gone before you even can, touch it. And the more transactions that you do, the higher this, the more you pay. And there are cheaper solutions, there are better solutions, and real-time solutions. So, to pay or to take collectively from the students 3 billion rand in the next 4 years, it is absolutely unacceptable. And I think, that they should go back to the drawing board with a new payment solution.
And Rudie, just before I let you go, if you were to give an example, I imagine you've got the attention of those that made these decisions. What would be the solution in as far as what you've just suggested? What sort of examples can you share with us this morning?
Well, if you think about the public service, they pay around about 2 million employees, contractors and employees per month, without any hiccups, without any problems. It's a payroll system. And there's deductions for public servants, there's overtime that must be paid, and to pay allowances to students is nothing else than a payroll system. And NSFAS should have gone to the public service, say, guys, how do you do this? Give us a hand, let us do it like this as well, so that we can pay directly to the students, we can do it ourselves, we don't need a third party or a service provider to do this. And streamline the service. There were 2 similar tenders that were advertised before this tender, where it was exactly that was the idea. A service provider that can facilitate the payment directly into the student's personal bank account. And that's important because from the first time when a student receives an allowance, he or she will have a relationship with a bank. Going forward, after you've qualified, you can carry on with that relationship with that specific bank. Financial emancipation, that's what it is. But now you are stuck with a system that's forced upon you, that you cannot, if you don't use it, you don't get your allowance. And there are cheaper, there are better solutions, there are solutions that work, and we've seen that. And this to pay these, or to take this kind of money over the next 4 years from students, is just absolutely unacceptable.
And Rudie, how would we avoid errors like that happened some time back, where some money was erroneously deposited into a student's account? Obviously, being a young person, was now started using that money. I mean, with those payroll systems that you are suggesting, alleviate those clinks, if you want to call it, within the chain.
I do believe so. We don't hear about public servants, that is getting 3, 4, 5, 10 times their salary because there's a glitch in the system. And when you control it yourself, there are a lesser chance that this kind of problems can occur. That specific payment that you're referring to was done by a third party, just as the scheme is now being handled. So if NSFAS, appoint people, do this internally, these kind of mistakes will not happen, or there's a slight chance that it will happen. So I do believe, we saw in the 2021-2022 annual reports of NSFAS that they have got 183 vacancies. Why don't you fill up those vacancies and do the work yourself without any problems? Some of the tender requirements is that the service provider must have a call center. We have seen and heard from students that they will call and hold the line for more than an hour without being attended to. If you do it in-house, you can strengthen all those services that you are supposed to give to your students, and that is your priority client, the students of the country. That is right. Why you are there, and that's what we think must happen.
Rudie, thank you so much for your time this morning. Thanks to OUTA's investigation manager, Rudie Heyneke, talking to us this morning here on NewsLink about the debacle of the updated investigation report on NSFAS direct payments.